Hey everyone, this is Coach Phoenix.
And I'm Coach Gina.
And this is U.S. Toast with the Coaches.
Cheers. Hi everyone, and thank you again for joining us for another episode of Perspective, the show where we talk about life, the universe, and all that other jazz.
And again, I'm Coach Phoenix, owner and CEO of Role Model Life Coaching LLC, where we focus on life transition and coaching.
And I'm Gina Erickson. I'm a certified life coach and founder of Clear Focus Coaching. I specialize in helping entrepreneurs untangle the challenges of starting up a business and finding work-life balance and staying accountable to their goals. I also specialize in empowering women, helping them to recognize their strength and potential in work, life, relationships, so they can face every day with confidence and intention.
I would like to raise a toast for open dialogue and perspectives. Today we have a very, very, very special guest. A brave young man, a brave soul, East Coast Officer Ed. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you.
What's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Got back from work, mowed the lawn, I'm doing all right.
Productive day.
Before we get started, just clear the air. Officer Ed is joining us, and he's want to provide us with his perspective. Again, that's his perspective. He don't speak for his department. He doesn't speak for all police officers. Gina, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just want to set the tone of this episode. I know that some people are very pro-officers, some people are very anti-officers right now. It's a very sensitive, I think, work field to be in, a very sensitive topic to talk about right now, which is exactly why we wanted to have Officer Ed on, and we're very thankful that he graciously decided to join us. To be clear, we're not here to berate anybody, make judgments of anything. We just wanted to do more of an AMA, Ask Me Anything, and just kind of get Officer Ed's perspective on his experience of being an officer. So Phoenix and I have reached out to our communities and have gathered some questions from some of you that we will be asking. And so the format of today's episode will be a little bit different than how it usually is. Usually it's more of an open conversation. This is going to be a little bit more of interview style and just really getting to know Officer Ed and kind of his experience.
His perspective, definitely. So, Officer Ed, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So, I guess before we start, get the elephant out the room and just let us know exactly who Officer Ed is. Let me know about your upbringing to about high school until you joined the force. We want to know do you have family? Do you have kids? We really just want to know who's the man behind the badge.
All right. Well, I grew up in a family of 6, so mom, dad, and 4 siblings. Well, 3 siblings plus me. I've always had a pretty steady job. My first job was working in an animal hospital. I did that for about 8 years until I became a police officer. I went to college I have my associate's degree. Now I live with my wife and 2 children.
Okay. So how long have you been on the force?
I've been on the force for 15 and a half years.
Oh, wow. You're a veteran. What, did you join the force when you was 12?
Yeah, I get that a lot. I'm older than I look, I guess.
That's going to serve you so well when you're like 70 and people are like, are you 25?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, but I did, I guess something that I could mention. My father was a police officer, so I'm kind of second generation police officer. So, it was within the household as I was growing up. For the most part, he didn't really talk about it much.
So you mentioned that you have 3 siblings. Where do you fall in the birth order of your siblings?
I'm the baby.
Baby. All right. Did that play any part in you becoming an officer that you were like, you know what? My older siblings protected me. Now I'm going to go protect the public.
That would sound really nice if that were the case, but no, not really. I wanted to be an actor, so
Wow.
that was my passion. And I was more of an artsy person, so it was kind of just, hey, this is a secure job. My dad did it.
Family business, right?
Pension. I always helped people. I worked in an animal hospital, so I enjoyed work that there is more to it than just sitting at a desk,
Mhm.
So, that's what happened. I didn't make it as an actor, so,
As you know, to clear the air, I know it's right now with the tension in America after the George Floyd murder. What concerns do you have being a police officer currently, and what brings you joy?
I mean, I think the concerns policing now is in this time is the generalization that you see a heinous act on TV perpetrated by someone who's wearing a uniform, and it becomes a generalized view of all police, and that's a shame for me. That's personally, it makes me feel sad because I've worked a long time as a police officer, and I haven't witnessed anything in my career that is just horribly and blatantly wrong. Personality types, yeah, everyone, are a human being, so there's personality types that I don't like, but that's probably the hardest part is hearing all these horrible things said about a general uniform, I guess, for lack of a better word. That's hard because most cops are there to help and there for good, and it's a shame that we get dragged through the mud, but that's unfortunately the nature of the beast. And I feel like the good cops out there can handle it, and we will handle it, and we'll persevere and hopefully keep the communities all safe while doing it. What brings me joy is the unity that comes from this, the potential changes that we can make. This show, podcast, whatever you want to call it, this is something that I feel is necessary. And would this have been here? Would it have been quiet if something horrible didn't happen? Maybe, I don't know. So these are the good things: the communication, the discussions, without anger and hate, just clearing the air, getting points of view of other people. I think that's very important, and that's why I was very excited to come on here. Like, again, as an officer, we worry about things, like having a drink, is he unfit for duty? Like, those are the things we have to worry about, and I think it's important that that's out there, that we have lives, and we're human beings as well, and we are not perfect by any means, and that doesn't excuse horrible, heinous acts for sure, but I think it's important. I find joy in that, the fact that we can hopefully all come, maybe this is the time where we'll come to an understanding and say, hey, we all need a little bit of change to make things right, to make the communities and the police and everyone work together.
Okay. Definitely. So I have a question. You said something that caught my attention. You mentioned generalization. You said because of the events that happen on TV, it's sad that you feel people pass judgment based on media, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So wouldn't you say the same, or some people could say that that's the same thing that police officers do to a certain community, especially a community of color, because of TV and things that they hear. So when they go into those certain neighborhoods or go during those certain situations, they may use those generalizations or those judgments, pass those judgments or stereotypes based on that as well. Would you say? What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, exactly, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. Where did I grow up? Like, I didn't even go to the city often. You know, I didn't hang out and party at night with friends and do things, you know, so like it was a different world to me. Yeah. You know, if you're not educated and you're not able to adapt and, you know, and be part of where you are, then you have no business being a police officer, in my opinion, because those generalizations are happening, and those are the changes that are being made. I think we're progressively moving forward. Nothing's perfect, nothing's great by any means, but we're progressively moving to a better place, you know, and a place where, you know, I mean, even just growing up, like, you know, when we were kids, right? All the bad guys wore black, right? Well, we'll use the colors. Screw it. All the bad guys wore black. All the good guys wore white, right? I mean, there's something to that, you know. And I feel like those things are changing now. They have been changing, but again, it takes a lot. You know, it takes a lot to break those habits. You know, like I can say with my children, you know, I'm breaking whatever habits that were bad that were passed on to me, you know, and hopefully that's this systematic breaking of those bad habits will be what stops the systematic negative that occurred and created the situation we're in now.
What type of bad habits was those that was passed down to you that you need to correct now and with your own children?
Like the neighborhood, right? You know, I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood. So things like that, like, you know, if a black family moved in, that was the talk of the town, you know, and it shouldn't be. That's not, you know. So those are the things where, you know, that's not going to be a big deal to my kids. It's not going to be like, oh, hey, who's that moved in down the block? You know, like, what's going on here? You know, like it's not going to be, it's not abnormal.
But you know what's crazy? And Gina, I want to get your take on that as well, and from your perspective. But it's funny because I grew up in a city. I don't know what city you're from, but I know that you mentioned you're from the East Coast. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from New York City. I'm from Brooklyn, New York. And in Brooklyn, New York, when we moved to a place, say like upstate, like Rochester or some parts of Queens, and we say like, hey, we moved to the quote unquote white neighborhood. So it's funny and to hear you say from your perspective that your family in your neighborhood is the talk of the town when you move to, when a black family move into your neighborhood. Well, it's a talk of our town when we move out of our community and move into a white neighborhood. It's the same, but it's like systemic racism, and I appreciate the fact that you kind of agreeing that it's a thing on both.
Oh yeah.
You know what you think about it?
Yeah, I think it's interesting too because I have a very similar experience. I grew up in a very tiny town in Michigan. I actually live in Minneapolis now, so I'm actually in kind of like I live about 15 minutes south of where George Floyd was murdered. So like all of everything was happening here, and to be part of that now, you know, feels so different from how I grew up because same thing. There was one Mexican family in our entire city. You know, like there was literally no black people, literally none, unless you went into Flint, which I was about 20 minutes away from growing up, and then it was like, but you don't want to go to Flint. Like, so there was this idea that, you know, Flint is bad, Flint is full of black people are bad, but as you grow up and you are like, you meet people and you have more experiences than your parents did, and you try to have that patience and understanding. Like, I think it takes a very strong person to, like you said, break that systemic racism within themselves and be like, no, that's a terrible thing to think. Like, why would I think that? Why would I teach that to my children? Why was I taught that? And to be able to break out of it rather than just to say, well, that's how I was raised, so it's fine, you know? So I really respect that you are taking that upon yourself and saying, you know, not only am I a father who wants the next generation to do better than I did and who wants to do better than the generation before me, but also as a police officer too, to acknowledge that and be like, you know what, it may not be perfect yet, but we're trying to push there. So to that point, I actually have a question. One of the people that we were asking for input, because you were talking about like, you know, it kind of sucks that people see like one bad apple or whatever it is, and then are like, all cops are terrible and like, you know, whatever. So along with that, there has been some articles and stuff that have come out recently about the good officers in departments who have been trying to come out and say like, hey, this person did a bad thing and they've been punished, fired, passed over for career advancement, you know, socially ostracized by the rest of the force, that kind of thing. And not being in that world, I don't know if that's rare or not, but I know that it does happen, and that can intimidate people from speaking out against the wrongdoings that they see. How do you feel about that when it happens?
You know, it wouldn't really be fair of me to attempt to answer this question, only because I've never had an experience like that. You know, I don't, you know, I'm trying to blow the smoke up the department's butt, but like I've never experienced something where if there was something that wasn't right and someone said something, that they got penalized or ostracized.
So tell me about that. Like, if you've had the opposite experience of like the positive side of that, like I want to know what has been your experience when someone is like, hey, this isn't quite right, and talked about it. Like, what happens, you know, for you?
I mean, I'm trying to, you know, that's the problem for me. Like in my experience of policing, you know, there are those officers that you don't want to work with, you know, that like you're like, oh, he escalates everything instead of de-escalating everything, you know, but not to the point of criminality, and not to the point of, you know, any kind of blatant racism or you know, it's just that personality type. Everyone knows that personality type, you know. If you know, it's like there's always that one guy that's gonna or girl that's gonna go the extra distance to either make a complete fool of herself, himself, or the group, you know. And you know, and that comes with being human. So it's one of those things. And yeah, like that person is told to tone it down a little, but usually it's like a general consensus. Like with what happened with George Floyd, I didn't, me personally, I didn't meet one cop or know one cop that was like, well, actually what he did was right, because nobody was on that. You know, everyone thought that was an atrocious act and just, you know, criminal. You know what I mean? Like, so maybe I'm lucky that I've gotten to work with people that are, you know, decent and kind for the most part, you know, but yeah, thankfully, I guess I'll just have to say, thankfully, I've never had to really experience anything like that, you know. I mean, yeah. You know, it's, yeah, I'm thankful that in my career, I never had to draw that line in the sand, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Officer Ed, I have a question based on what you said. Okay, so I agree. I haven't met a person or so that will argue that what that cop did to George Floyd wasn't wrong or wasn't murder, right? I agree with that. However, as a police officer, the question, I was watching Candace Owens, and she was having the debate against, I forgot who was her, who was on the side of the table. However, she mentioned something. She said that she felt the cops that was standing around George Floyd, they are not considered murderers as well, right?
Yeah, they're just as guilty, in my opinion. I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, and so you answered my question, and I'm glad. But I want to put my perspective on that. So individuals that, and again, I'm not choosing a side. I'm not saying anybody's right. It just something comes to mind when that's mentioned, when individuals question, hey, they was just rookies. The veteran officer, like they was like, oh, I guess this is proper procedure. But my thing is, if I'm with Gina, right, and Gina and I are riding along, and Gina said, "Hey, I gotta stop for gas." And Gina goes into the gas station, robs the gas station, murders everybody in the gas station, comes out, tells me like, "Man, I'm like, hey Gina, how do you get this money?" Or I robbed the gas station and I kill everybody in the gas station. We go 4 blocks, we get pulled over by the cops. What's gonna happen to me? I'm going to jail, correct?
Yeah, 100%.
So how those cops that was trained to protect the difference between right and wrong? It's just a question. I'm not saying I'm on any side.
No, look, you could say whatever you want about them, because the minute I watched that video, I said every one of them tried with murder, for murder, 100%. Before cops, before black, before white, before anything, we're humans, and to stand by and watch that for, what was it, 9 minutes? I've never watched the whole thing because I just can't. But there is something wrong with that. There's, and like, again, I can Monday morning quarterback all day long if I was on the scene. But I'm sorry, if I was on the scene, it would have not ended the way it ended. End of story. I feel confident enough saying that, because it's just, I've said right from the beginning, every one of those guys there, deserve to be tried as murderers or accessory to murder. Just like you, if in that scenario you gave us, you'd have been charged with accessory to murder and robbing because you fled with her.
Yeah, that was a very specific layout that you did, Phoenix, too. I want everyone to know that I have not robbed a gas station, murdered a bunch of people. Never happened. Never happened. I didn't do that.
She said, just putting that out there. I'm just saying.
No, yeah. I think like that's a fair analogy to be making of like how citizens are held to a certain standard, and that police officers too, like there's an oath that you guys take, like you said, to protect and to serve, and that, like, yes, you are humans, but also you are police officers when you're wearing that uniform, and there comes with that another level. I mean, Spider-Man said it best, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So
I thought that was Einstein.
It may have been. I know it from Spider-Man. This is my life.
Oh, joke.
So I am wondering though, because like when I read the reports of the other officers, 2 of them, one of them was like working his 3rd shift, and the other one was working his like something like 13th hour or something. Like both of them were super, super new.
Yeah, but he was, how old was he?
He was old
enough to know the difference between right and wrong, right?
Yes. The conflict that I had was that, so I agree, like they should be tried, right? I 100% agree, so I'm going to put that out there. The conflict that I had was that, wow, their training failed them. Their training failed them that they let a superior officer make that call. Because they did say, like, there was one of the officers was like, should we turn him over? Like, he's saying he can't breathe. He said it. He spoke it. He was like, we need to take action on this. And the superior officer was like, no, he's fine, and just shut that down. And I can't imagine that being a brand new rookie, that he was like, oh, okay, I feel like this is wrong, but I also feel like I can't speak up and I can't say something, so I'm just not going to. So I'm wondering from your perspective. Right. So, but I'm wondering, so you said that you've been, what did you say, 12, 15 years on the force?
Yeah, 15, yeah.
15 years on the force. If you were 3 days on the force, do you think that would have changed anything for you at all, or no?
Ooh, that's a good one, Gina.
No, I mean, like, that's easy to say. It's easy to say because I'm not in the moment, but no. Well, I can say it with as much certainty as a hypothetical question can be answered. It's just, like, I don't even like squishing bugs. You know what I mean? Like, you're watching a human being beg and plead. Like, I just, no way. If it's shame on me if that, I would ever be that guy, but I don't think I ever would, ever. I mean, I don't know. it's a hypothetical question, but I know who I was when I had 3 days on this job, and I know what I didn't even like writing someone a summons for drinking in public. You know what I mean? Like so yeah, there's no way. That's kind of like blowing smoke up my own butt now, but there's no way I would do it. Anyone that knows me would probably agree and tell you that.
You know what I understand there's a misperception that all cops are bad. And what's crazy? I have experienced not police brutality, but I have experienced being picked on because I was the color of my skin a few times. But with that being said, I also experienced being helped and saved and rescued by cops. I remember one time, I am not a manly man that's going to be out there and change tires. It was raining. I was on the side of the road, and a cop pulled over and said, "Hey, what's going on?" I'm like, "Man, I'm having trouble with this tire." He looked at me. He was like, he could tell, like, this fucking pretty boy. And he got down. And he was a white police officer. So I'll be a liar and say all cops are bad. But then I'll be also being a liar and say, hey, the concerns that's going on right now and the voices that's being heard is not valid because, like, I live that.
Yeah.
I'll ask you, Ed, how does, like, implicit bias affect a cop's reaction in dangerous situations as you think about, like, fight, flight, or freeze mode?
Like I said, me, coming onto the job and being, coming out of a neighborhood where there was really no crime that I knew of. And, like, we left our bicycles on the front porch and didn't worry about them, everyone was in bed by 9, like coming from that place. When I was walking those streets, I was nervous. I was nervous. I was like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. What do I got to do? But when I think back, I was mostly nervous about having to use the radio and say the right codes. And, I found it fascinating to be experiencing a different world from what I've known. There is that bias and there is that fear. And I feel like that brings me to something that I would like to touch upon. We need police departments in general, especially, and I apologize, George Floyd, where was that? That was in Indianapolis?
Minneapolis.
Yeah, that department, the fact that none of those officers stood up means that there was something deeper in that department. So I can't speak on that. I don't know. I've never worked there. I wouldn't be able to tell you, what happens at a roll call in that department. I don't know. But what I do know is that, and what I do believe is that training needs to be better. Cultural training, not just the physical stuff or the radio codes. We need to learn about other communities, just like as if we were in college or elementary school for that matter. We need to learn about other communities, other cultures. We need to learn some psychology. I mean, you do learn a little bit, but psychology is very important because for me, 15 years, I was able to talk my way out of any problem. For the most part, any problem, without really getting physical. I think I've gotten physical once in my career where an injury occurred. Psychological training to teach us how to handle different situations more than what we get. We need cultural training to teach us different cultures because a lot of these people are coming, like me, coming straight from neighborhoods where, the culture is different. We're not used to seeing, families when I first started, I was like, why is this whole family here? Little babies, they're out and it's 3 a.m. What's going on here? So, that was a bizarre shock to me. The vetting process for police officers, I think, needs to change too. I think we need better, better, checks and psychological testing, so that you can, and also you need to have police officers that aren't coming straight out of school. They should have workforce experience, so they know what it's like to work a job and have a boss. And, I think all those things are very important just within the department, internally within the department, to be producing better officers and officers that can handle situations and that can recognize their fears and work through them, without panic. So if you want to fund anything, I say fund that, put money there, so that, because I think policing is a necessary thing. It's not something that we can just be like, yeah, all right, see you later. It's just, it's a necessary thing. Yeah, I think those are very important. And then the other part of it, families, like Phoenix, you were saying, that maybe, growing up you were picked on, and, police are usually sent to areas where there's higher amounts of crime, right? We don't make those numbers up. Those numbers are there, so we're sent there. Now, I was working in a predominantly Hispanic area, and I stopped the guy, this is the beginning of my career, and he said that I'm stopping him because he's Spanish. And there was nothing but Spanish people around. If he was white and I stopped him, then I would be racially profiling him. You know what I mean? So it was like one of those things, But I feel like in these communities, and now this is, I speak from this from a technical point of view because I never experienced it. I cannot begin to know what it's like to walk out of the house, a black man, and feel whatever is felt. I cannot speak on that because I don't know. But I feel like somewhere.
Oh, and I don't mean to interrupt you, and I hope I don't lose your thought. But I just want to congratulate you and say thank you for acknowledging that it's a thing to be a black man in America. When you just said that you don't know how, like that, I got goosebumps out. Thank you. No, seriously, Ed, thank you. I hope other people heard and felt that when he said that. So continue. My apologies. Well,
I just, now I hope my next part isn't going to ruin that for you. Because what I was trying to say is, like, just like with me, with my kids, right? I wasn't, like, the things that happened, the small, little things that you could say were systematic for me, had nothing to do with violence, had nothing to do with fear, it had to do with fear, my parents' fear, but it had nothing to do with, violence or walking out in the street, and being afraid. But I feel like, Phoenix, are you a parent? If you don't mind me asking.
No problem.
Yeah. So I feel like parents of minorities need to, instead of saying, hey, instead of saying, hey, be careful when you go outside, cops are going to bother you and they're going to mess with you, because that immediately puts a negative connotation on officers. And now that child is going to think, oh, why do police bother me? And already that creates the segregation right there in that child's mind. Like, we're different, where we need to be on alert. And yeah, like I said, I don't know what it's like, but I feel that if a minority child is told, hey, when you go outside, where we live, there's crime. And it's a statistical number. We're not committing crime, but there's crime in our area, and people like us live here. Like, boys and girls of color, however you want to say it, live in this neighborhood. So you may be stopped by the police. I got to talk when I was growing up. Granted, my dad was an officer, so he knew something that I didn't know, and that's why I love that we're doing this perspective thing, because he always told me the officer is always right. If he stops you, if he bothers you, if he you listen to everything he says and you do what he says. I don't care, and if you're doing anything wrong, you're going to jail. I'm not bailing you out. That's what my dad always told me, So I feel like that too was, but in these minority neighborhoods and where people are afraid to, young men are afraid to leave their house because they don't want to be harassed and bullied. And I think that if they start from a young person and they say, hey, police aren't bad, they might stop you. You might feel like it's unfair, but there's a lot of crime in this area. Because there's crime in the area you're in, if it is or not. There's a lot of crime in this area. They're stopping us right now for our good. Because 9 times out of 10, I'll call on the radio. Male, black, mid-30s, robbed a store. I mean, like, what do you do with that? You know what I mean? Like, there's no further description. So it's like, it's hard. Maybe like a color of a shirt. What do you do that? I don't want to offend anyone, but if you're in that general vicinity and I stop you, but that's where, in my opinion, that's also where intelligence comes in and the training comes in, because I've never, maybe I can remember 3 or 4 times where I've actually written someone a ticket that didn't thank me in the end. Why is that? That sounds crazy, because I could speak to them. I treated them not like some criminal or some bad guy or some, I treated them like a human being. Look, I apologize. This is my job. You went through the red light. Oh, yeah, I did. They know what they did, so it's like one of those things, if I stop someone in the scenario I gave, like male black, 30, just robbed the store and he's wearing a black shirt, and there's a guy with a black shirt and he's a male black and he looks like he could be in his 30s, and I stop him. I'm going to say, hey, sir, I'm really sorry to bother you. I know, and I've said it numerous times. I know you probably get this a lot. I try to make it, light of it, just because it happens. We're not, I'm not stupid. It happens in the world. But I feel like, those parents that walk up to a police officer and say, they have their kid and they say, you better behave or this officer is gonna. I hate that. I'm like, we don't teach children how to behave. That's your job. I always tell the parent that, always. And they're like, and they walk off, because police officers shouldn't be looked at in a negative light. Now, the police officers that do things wrong, 100%, they're bad, because they have power and they're given power by the people, and now they're abusing that power. So they are bad. I don't care, but I feel like these changes need to be made on all ends, more so within the departments, 100% more so within the departments. But the fear that, that young minority children have of police officers shouldn't be there, in my opinion. It shouldn't be there, because, for me and for the 99% of the cops I know, nobody is there to hurt anyone. We're there to do a job. We're paying for our homes. I came home from work, I mowed the lawn. Like, we have those things in our heads too, like, I have to get home, I have to read to my kids, I have to mow the lawn, I have to do, and 99%, there are those guys that, and this is where the vetting process, there are those alphas that, want to wear the uniform just to wear the uniform and be the big macho man, who will undoubtedly speak to someone like they are less than them. But that cop does it with every race, every person, every gender. They don't care, like, that cop is the man because he's wearing a uniform, and that should go. Like, that's the cop I don't work with, so I ostracize them in the other way, and I just feel like, those are the real important points I wanted to make, is that fearing the police won't work either, now I speak that, like I said, from coming from a world where I ever walked outside and got stopped 10 times on my way to the, grocery store. So, I could be completely out of left field and not right about it. I don't know. But those are the things I want to say, like, I'm going to teach my kids that there is no difference between Phoenix and I, except for the fact that he lives in another state. That's the only difference. We're both human beings. We're both men. We both have the same blood. We both have the same fears. We both have the same joys. We both have the same hopes and aspirations. We both want the world to be a fun place for us. And I think that that's important, because I feel like once we put on that uniform, we're not people anymore, and I'm sure, I don't know, but I'm sure like a minority person would say, well, yeah, hey, that's how we feel every day we leave our house. Like, you don't perceive us as a person because we're wearing our skin color. And I don't know how to get past that. I don't. I wish I did, but it comes with education and just patience, I guess, and a little bit of hope, that the people can come together. And that's why this is so, what you guys are doing is fantastic.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Gina, if you don't mind, I got some points I want to touch on.
Oh, I have so many too. You go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. So Ed, thank you so much. That was a lot, and I'm glad you got that out there, and you made some really good points, and some points I want to bring up. So I don't think you was on either side. You started out by saying that that a lot of the exposure and the training and the it lies on the police departments, and the police departments need to step it up as far as cultural awareness, multicultural training. If that's what I heard, correct?
100%.
Yeah, definitely. And then you say, yeah, you don't really understand how it is to walk out your door and be a minority in America. However, you feel that the conversations that parents have with their children shouldn't be negative. It should have some type of tone to where they are making them understand, like, hey, this is the situation based on the area we live in. It's not the police officer's fault. So I guess I would like to say that I am a parent, and the conversation that I would have with my children is based on my experiences. So my experience, it's funny. My mother, growing up, again, in Brooklyn, New York, my mother never had a conversation. Oh, I ain't grow up with a father. So I never had a conversation with anyone saying, hey, cops are bad and all cops are good. That conversation never was said to me, right? However, growing up in the projects of Gowanus, and that's a project in downtown Brooklyn, New York, and I was in the 90s, so I was around elementary school age. And my friends, I come to the neighborhood because my cousin lived there, but I grew up there, so I'm always at my cousin's house playing. And I go to hang out with my cousins, and all the kids in the neighborhood is down and they sad. And I'm like, what's going on? And he was like, Nick died. And that's one of the kids is Nicholas Haywood. I'm like, what you mean? How did he die? They was playing cops and robbers. They was going through the building, playing cops and robbers with cap guns. And the cop came and thought it was a real gun and shot him. So that's my experience, my first experience about interaction with cops. That had nothing to do with any parent. It's just a situation with somebody I knew and people that I knew. That's my first situation. Then situations, like you said, because of my neighborhood, I see people get slammed to the ground and roughed up by cops because, again, you said policing. Then I get to the age of, because I grew up in a melting pot and I didn't have that exposure to where I really felt racism, to be honest. I guess, yeah, I ran into the law, but I was doing things that put me in that situation. So again, I feel like I'm a real one. I take responsibility. So when I changed my life around, I felt that, yeah, cops are good, and I didn't have any run-ins. And the run-ins that I did have, like I said, was cops helping me out, saving me on the side of the road. But then it was a particular day where I was with a buddy of mine, and I was in a suit, he was in a suit, and we was in an Audi. It was my friend's car, and he just bought it. So I was like, hey, let me drive it. Like, I wanted to look nice in it. So we was sitting in the alley because we was trying to figure out where we were going. So I'm playing with the GPS, and I noticed a cop behind me. So I'm looking behind me, and I'm saying, okay, like, this cop behind me for like the last 15 minutes, we just shooting the shit. We're not really going anywhere. We just like buddies, just talking. So then I'm like, you know what? Let's pull off. Let's go get something to eat, because this cop is behind us. So as soon as I pull off, the cop pull off as well. I make a right, he make a right. I make a left, he make a left. He followed me for about 10 minutes. So to a point where I'm at the light, I say, you know what? I just pulled over. So when the light turned green, I pulled over to the side of the road. As I pulled over to the side of the road, he pulled behind me and turned on the lights. I'm looking like, man, this is some BS. Comes, say, hey, license and registration. I said, hey, give him my license and registration. Say, hey, officer, like, why did you pull me over? He said, I'll tell you in a minute. Go back, do whatever he do in the cop car, come back, get my license and registration. He's getting aggressive with me, and I'm getting a little like, hey, like, what's going on? Why do you stop me? He said, you didn't put on your signal when you parked. I'm like, are you freaking serious? You was behind me for the past 15 minutes. I pulled off. I see you follow me. I made intentional turns to see if you was following me. You followed me. So I just parked just because I wanted to see like what was going on. It became a big thing between he and I going back and forth. I'm videotaping the whole thing. To this day, I have a videotape. And the thing about it is, like, I mean, we spoke prior to this a little bit. I'm not a bad guy. Do you feel like I'm a bad guy? I'm educated. I was in a nice vehicle. I was dressed the part. So I was really confused on what was going on. I don't always play the race card. I never played the race card. I know that there is situations in America where I feel as a Black person, I have to work at my 150% to equal my counterpart's 75%, which is cool. That's just my life, because like you growing up, that what was told to me by people that I was raised by, like, hey, that's just life. And I'm okay with it because I don't feel like there's any barriers. I just have to work harder. Is that fair? No, it's just life to me. You get it? So I don't know, Gina, your experiences with cops or cops?
Yeah. It's funny because I never really had any run-ins with cops when I was a kid. I grew up in the country. Like, what do you do in the country, you know? Except for like ride your bike and, I don't know, run through the woods, I guess. Like, that's what we did. It really wasn't until I moved to Minneapolis that I had any interactions with a cop. And yeah, the only interaction that I ever had, so my nephew is actually a police officer, and you know, like you say, like it kind of changes things, I think, because when you know someone personally, you know, it's like we were talking about earlier, like when you know somebody of a different race or a different gender or different you know, sexual orientation or whatever it is, some of your biases kind of go out the window when you start seeing them as humans. And you know, it's so easy to dehumanize somebody on the TV or somebody that you see from a distance. But when you actually sit and you talk to somebody and you get to know them and really, you know, you hear that they have kids like you do, and that, you know, their kids, you know, aren't sleeping at night, or they're having trouble with math or whatever that is that they're experiencing. I think that those are some of the things that we need to focus on. Like you both were saying, you know, like it makes a difference. But also I think it's hard because like I don't know the solution to like not teaching our children to fear police, because I kind of see it. I mean, obviously, like I'm not a person of color, Black or Indigenous, but I am a woman. And so the experience that I have had isn't from police, it's from men. And from the time that I was a child, like I was taught, like, you need to be careful around men. You need to lock your doors. You need to look behind you if they're following you. You need to be careful. Not that all men are bad or are out to like attack me, but like that's something that I was made very aware of to keep myself safe, because there are people out there who are trying to hurt you. And so I think it becomes very difficult when you are given a position of power or responsibility. Like how do you go about like changing that systemic perspective, you know, of, you know, Phoenix or, you know, people of color, like they want to keep their children safe. But on the other hand, like you don't want to put that in their head that like, whoa, it's a cop, you know, you better watch out. You better, like, they're going to pull their gun on you the second that they see you. Like, that's not true either. So like, how do you come to that middle ground of like, okay, cops need to see people as humans, and, you know, civilians need to see cops as humans. Like, how do we do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is the question. And Phoenix, I'm sorry that you experienced that situation. And I agree that that is a form of the systemic racism in our country. And that could have probably gone another way if you weren't educated, and if you decide, no, I'm not going to take this today. I'm here with my suit, I'm relaxing, I'm chilling, we're having a good time, and you guys are harassing me. So kudos to you for being able to get through that situation and now use it as, hey, see, here we go, here's an example. Because I agree, and yeah, as a police officer, I wouldn't know what to say to that. Personally, I didn't like writing tickets, so I didn't want to bother people. It is what it is. If I had to, I would, but I'm not looking for anything. Like if you threw a bottle of beer out your window and then drove off, yeah, I'd pull you over. You know what I mean? But other than that, I mean, so it's, but yeah, I mean, hey, like these are the things that I think educating police officers will help.
Our community as well, and I got something. I took something away from this conversation. It needs to be this type of dialogue and this type of forum that needs to occur, but on a consistent basis, and it should be ongoing and part of like a structured training.
Yeah,
because you're right. Individual in my community and the communities that I came from, they need to understand the purpose of police and the reason why police is around, and why police are extra aggressive or they have more of a presence in certain neighborhoods. Because like you say, that ignorance caused people to act in a certain way because they don't have that information. So there's the go to gaps. And I think that we just kind of identify that. So I hope that viewers, some of you are individuals of power in the government. If you're hearing this and you're seeing that this type of dialogue will be beneficial to your departments, to your city, reach out to us, because like I would love to put something together to bridge that gap, man. It's about each and every one of us trying to make a change and do something right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and the youth, the youth too. The youth, they have to be open-minded as well. And it's talking to we deal with it a lot. Talking to a 15-year-old, and trying to talk to them and just get through to them. It's not easy. They don't want to talk to you. They don't. I mean, like when I was 15, I didn't want to listen to my parents. I'm not going to listen to some stranger just because he's wearing a uniform. So. It's really hard, and unfortunately, there's so many ways to backslide. There's gangs are one of them. Like a group of friends that are up to no good. Those guys are very loyal. Like those friends are loyal. They'll go to jail for you. They'll, I mean, I grew up. I had friends like that. But I was like the last Boy Scout. I would take myself out of the car and walk home if there was something bad going on, but sometimes that's a lonely world. And I don't know. I don't know what it's like growing up in an environment where you kind of have to go along a little bit so that, you're not called a punk or whatever. You're not, I don't know what it's like to do that. I was always kind of my own self, motivated person. I didn't mind being alone. I didn't mind doing things on my own. I never needed a crowd to make myself, feel accepted or good. So those are all important things. And unfortunately, the youth is where it starts. And it's, it's hard to get through to some of these young kids, like, you hear so many stories of fighting and shooting, and all these young kids are doing this to each other, and it's like, why? Why? It's like, I don't understand it. Like I would never understand, because I didn't grow in it.
I could definitely tell you why. It's because when I was growing up, they had things like community centers. I grew up in New York, where In the summertime, the high schools will open up to the kids. So that's how I learned how to swim. That's how I learned how to play pool. We learn how to ball. Things like that is not available. So when I know where in social media, and I definitely want your opinion and your opinion, Gina, on this, as they start to the outcry for defunding police and giving it to certain social programs. One, I want to know, do y'all agree with that? And if so, what programs that was under police purview right now and roles and responsibilities, what programs can you give that money to, like social programs, et cetera? And do you think that's defunding police officers is essential in helping spread some of those dollars around to communities so they could bring back some of those community centers and programs?
Yeah, I wanna just pile on to that if I can, because that was actually one of the questions that I wanted to ask you, was your perspective on that, Officer Ed. Because you had mentioned earlier about, like, you know, funding better training and, you know, psychology and like all of these things. And what I'm hearing from that is that, like, there's not enough support, you know, and that's a lot to ask of a police officer, to, you know, be a psychiatrist and to be a psychologist and to like put all those things on you guys. Like that is a huge, tall order. And so personally, like, I'm in favor of the defund the police, not because I'm like, well, police shouldn't get a paycheck. Like, you deserve a paycheck. You deserve to support your family. I'm all for that. And for the support that you need from your department as well. I'm also in support of funding organizations or companies or what have you that can support you as well. So if you get a call and you're like, this is, you know, then someone can come in and they can help you, because that's where their specialization is, you know, being able to build relationships with other people who can better support you, because I think that you deserve that.
Yeah, I agree with both. I mean, you know, if only there was so much money in the world, you know, like funding the police, right? You know, they're not taking paychecks, right? I mean, I'm not concerned with that. You know, I think 100% that there should be, you know, reallocating funds for community centers and for, you know, children and playgrounds or whatever, you know, 100%. Libraries, you know, something that can educate children and keep their minds occupied on something other than, you know, being in the streets or you know, whatever kids are occupied on nowadays. I mean, you know, everyone has a phone in their hand now, you know. I mean, hopefully, because they'll be listening to this, but yeah, I'm all for that. You know, like, you know, I'll walk a foot post if it means some community will have a nice community center to go to, and kids will have a place to swim or you know, ball without having to worry about things getting stolen or without having to, you know, worry about beef on the street or whatever. You know, yeah, 100%. I'll walk a foot post for that. You know, I don't need a car. You know, the other side of it, Gina, was, you know, I'm all for that too, 100% for that. That's a little bit harder though, because when you're talking about police departments all over the country, there are some smaller departments that's feasible, but then there's huge departments where, you know, it's not feasible. You know, like, you would need, I mean, it just, maybe it would work. I mean, I don't want to, you know, say it wouldn't, but also in my experience as a police officer, that piles on a risk too, because, you know, like a big thing was psychologically disabled people, you know, emotionally disturbed people. Those are volatile situations. You know, those situations can spontaneously combust without ever realizing it. Now, yeah, will someone who's trained, better trained, you know, someone, you know, that their sole training is psychological issues and psychology, be able to recognize when that combustion is going to happen and potentially de-escalate it? Yeah, but then if they don't, if they arrive on the scene without a police officer, or if they arrive along with the police officer and it's already there, now what you did was you've put another life at risk, you know. I mean, it could work, but it throws a lot of different aspects in there. Like, are who's going to take those jobs? Like, are they going to wear bulletproof vests too? How, like, that's like I said, if we had all the money in the world, it would be great. We can do it, like give everyone a vest and, hire well-trained psychologists and psychiatrists, by bulk. Hey, send me back to school. I'll go back to school and get a degree just so I can do that job instead. I'd love it. These are all things that, in a perfect world we could do, but we have to figure out how to do it potentially without that, like both sides. And I think that what we all, I think, agree on is it has to do with education. It has to do with what we're doing right here, discussions, sitting down and talking and communicating, and look, I mean, what ruins most relationships? Communication, right? So, it's the same thing. We need to communicate better with everyone. And also we need cops to be open-minded. And that's a tricky part. Like, I'm open-minded. I'm easy, like I love everything. All people, I was actually going to wear my Love is Love shirt, but then I said, I'm not going to wear that. Just, because I don't want to like get on a soapbox for any other causes, but
speak up. We're here to talk.
I love soapboxes. Maybe we should rebrand soapbox. That should be our
because I have a transgender daughter. So when she grows up, I worry about those things. So it's there's a lot of different things. It's not just color. And so communication and education, I think, are the answers. Like over monetary, over anything else, it's communication and education. And if we can all, like I watched protests walk by me, cursing at me, screaming at me, calling me all kinds of vile names. And what I was thinking wasn't like, well, I wish I could, get in there and call them a name. I was thinking, man, I want to give this person a hug. I just want to give them a hug and be like, look, we're in this together, man. Like my kids have to grow up in this world too. I don't want this, and that's what's important. Like we have children that are growing up now, and those children have parents that want the world to be better, and so, to say that, it's just, it's a tricky situation. It's hard, but I think communication and education is the key to it. And if we're going to reallocate funds and put it towards that, community centers where you can, community centers where officers go. I mean, and
I was going to say that, bring back the PAL. I used to be part of the Police Athletic League. You know about the PAL?
I'm sure there's programs out there. I don't know, but yeah. I mean, but that's where it also falls on the community to say, hey, do this. Go, a parent to say, get there, do this. Don't do this, do that. Oh, but cops are assholes. Cops are jerks. I don't want to be with a cop. It takes a parent to say they might have acted bad in the past. They might have done this. I had bad experiences, but they're not all bad. This is for us. Let's go there. Let's give it another shot. Because that's what it takes. It takes patience and it takes forgiveness. Right? I mean, I'm not really a religious guy, but growing up, it was Catholic and Bible and all that, and forgiveness was like the key, right? Forgiveness.
Oh, yeah.
So, forgiveness, right? I mean, I think that's a human thing. It doesn't have to do with any religion. It just has to do with, look, we're going to be wronged. If we hold on to that wrong, what are we doing? We're not doing anything better. Holding on to someone's wrongdoing is like throwing gasoline on fire to put it out.
And to your point, along with forgiveness comes repentance. Like there has to be that change of heart to be able to say, like, Yeah, you can
Yeah.
ask for forgiveness, but it's like, if a dog bites you over and over again, you can forgive the dog all you want, but he's still going to bite. So it's like,
Yeah.
that there needs to be, and the running theme that I'm hearing coming from, I feel like all three of us in this conversation, is relationships. Building that relationship, knowing the people that you're serving, making connections with the people that you're serving, talking to them, building those relationships. I mean, Officer Ed, you build that relationship with your kids. Like, that is why they trust you
Yeah.
to walk in the footsteps that you're laying out and saying, like, this is the way of life, this is how you should do things. It's because you've built a relationship with your children. When you build a relationship with communities of color, Black people, like that changes their perspective of you, because if you don't have that relationship as a basis, and a cop pulls you over and he is an asshole, that's the relationship you now have with officers.
Yeah.
So,
that's my biggest problem. That's why, a lot of people that know me would say, oh yeah, Ed doesn't like being a cop. And my only reason for it is that I'm just as bad as the last experience you had. So no matter how good I am, if you leave me, like we had, like say I was the officer that fixed your tire, right, on the road. And then you're like, wow, cops are freaking awesome, man. See, this is why I got to have a better perspective. And then, like, you pull it into your driveway, and then all of a sudden a cop comes and is like, hey, sir, what are you doing in this driveway? Like, for no reason. And
that was literally
like,
my first experience with a cop.
Yeah. And then that's what you take, That's what you take. You say, oh, see, there, and, it's, how do you fix that? How do you fix that? And I don't know. But I think that maybe it'll be fixed. It could be fixed in, like I said right in the beginning of this whole thing, vetting and having more well-trained professionals psychologically testing applicants and just like different personality tests and things. Because if you have a personality that's, wants to be in control, like puts on the uniform, is like puffs out his chest or her chest and, thinks they're the boss. That's not what you want in a police officer. You want a police officer that can put on a uniform and disappear. Just, hey, I'm here for you. Cry on me. Do what you need to do. That's because that's 90% of our job, really. 90% of our job is not the movies fighting and running and jumping. It's let me console you because we just arrived at your house and your mother's passed away. It's stuff like that. You just had an accident. Let me help you figure out what to do with this accident. That's the bulk of our job. It's not like let me gun down and run and gun and chase and jump. We're not Danny Glover and Mel Gibson. It's it's and I don't know. Yeah, I can talk all night.
Yeah.
I'm like this.
You got the right guy.
We love it. So, I just want to bring up as well. I think it takes away from the protest. It takes away from the message when bullshit like officers being murdered or the looting and things in that nature. And I would say again, that's bullshit, because that's not the message and that's not a representation of Black America. So I just want to put that out there.
Yeah.
I'm not for that. I think that's garbage. And RIP, and I pray for the families of the officers that families that have. This is touchy for me, man, because I witnessed a lot of death. I'm a veteran, so I know for you that this is dear to your heart as well. So again, my condolences to those families that lost their loved ones because they're pretty sick.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
My question to you is, how dealing with things in that nature and knowing that now your job, the tension has elevated. How do you and your colleagues deal with anger management, and how do y'all deal with how you prioritize and deal with your mental health?
I mean, I guess it's different for every department. I mean, my department has all kinds of resources for mental health. Things just to get back to what you said, like the whole George Floyd thing set up, tragically set up such a wonderful platform for change, and like you said, it was just, unfortunately, all the other people with other agendas decided they wanted to like ruin that platform, that's why this is also important what you guys are doing, because it takes it back to the real reason, but I got off my thought now. What were we talking about? We were talking. You had a question. What was the question? Sorry.
You prioritize it.
Yeah, and anger issues. Yeah, I mean, yeah, what's happening is kind of, and it's the, I don't want to sound like anyone, but I feel like the media has such an incendiary pull on everything. It's like they don't want anyone to do what we're doing here. They want us to be mad at each other and hate each other and segregated, and it's like, and the reason why I got to that is like, with the anger issues, who do cops turn to, right? We turn to each other. But what does that do? That keeps us in that blue world and everyone else out, and that's why, like, cops hang out with cops, and that's where the whole blue line thing comes from, is like, who's going to be there for us? Nobody. I can't talk to anyone but a fellow cop because he knows what's going on, and that causes segregation, in my opinion. It causes segregation of not races, because some departments are minority driven. They're, percentage wise, they have more minorities than not, so.
But they're still in group, out group.
Yeah, but it's still like blue versus everything else, because, and I'm sure as a veteran, like, there's certain things, I don't know what branch you were, but I know Marines are Marines, man, Army, like, so like
Marines are Marines, they do that. I love the Marines, but they have that, like, because of the training, and they have that.
Yeah, but like police are nowhere near military, that's for sure. I'm not, not even gonna touch on that, but we experience things that not everyday people experience. Like, how many dead bodies have you seen? You know what I mean? Like, not you, Phoenix, because you unfortunately probably have seen some. But like, that takes a toll on your soul. Like, seeing that every day. For 15 years. Like, watching people cry over their loved ones, and trying to help them, but you can't. Like those are the things that we go internally for. We talk to other officers, or you talk to other veterans, or so how do you fix that? I don't know. Maybe, hey, you guys maybe start it up, man. Start up some place where all people can come. The police, veterans, anyone with any kind of issues can come and work together and talk about all their issues together, instead of keeping it segregated, because one person's depression over, I don't know, anything is the same as this person's depression over witnessing murders and seeing dead people. I mean, the depression is depression, so
there's common
that's
ground.
not changing, so instead of segregating, maybe we should do something like that, have a community center where people can come just to talk and work things out,
I like that idea, but let's take it further. Let's take it to a point where police officers and people in their community can have that dialogue. So the police officers, hey, this is how we feel. This is how my family feel when I lost my family member to someone in this community killing them. And then they could say, well, this is how I feel because my son was killed. And they could share those stories and share that dialogue so they could start to understand. And then, like you said, they could start branching out and telling their kids and their kids.
Yeah. I definitely think that's what Officer Ed was getting at, was that, like, there's not police and there's not community, like, there's not civilians, there is people. And we need to have those conversations around the experiences that we share, and to find those commonalities, and to be able to have that with each other. Cause like, I mean, and it's funny too, just like looking at my screen and seeing the three of us, right? Like there are very obvious differences between the three of us and experiences that each individual's, well, I mean, Phoenix, you are the most beautiful of us. So like that's there. So, you know what it's like to be the most beautiful of the group.
We all have lovely smiles.
Time for a second. Gina, you're number one.
but like it's I think it's wonderful that like each of us are so different with our own experiences, but that even just talking to you for the past hour, Ed, like there are experiences that I personally can relate to, either in your job or like on a personal level too, like I have a transgender niece and like, I think that's awesome. Like, I'm like, I would love to talk to you about that. Like talk to you about your daughter's experience. And like, I don't know, like there's so many things that, we all share and like, we're all parents and like, there's so many experiences that we can share and come together and talk about. And like you said, the point that you made in the very beginning of this, Officer Ed, was like, at the end of the day, we're humans and we need to see each other as humans with feelings and blood and, like, that's what we're here to do. And I really, really appreciate, again, that you decided to join us today and to share your experiences and to share your perspective so openly and rawly and honestly. We really, really appreciate that.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys. I mean, this is what's needed. So I hope it takes off because, it's important. Definitely.
It will take off, man. Well, you just have one of those faces. You say you active, you got that active face. Look. Right? No, but thank you for joining us, man. And just a caveat on that, the connection between your niece and your daughter, Ed. Your daughter, correct?
Yes.
Yes, your daughter. It's one of my specialties. And again, this is a topic we could have a whole nother conversation around this. But one of my specialties, I am an ally of the LGBTQ community. One of my specialties, transition outside the closet. So if that's something that you're interested in, or viewers are y'all interested in, you need coaching around that, hit up the website, it's down below. Hit me up on IG, and that's something we could definitely talk about. This been this been an experience. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. And before we go, this is one of my favorite parts of the show. It's our thing of the week. During our thing of the week, we share something that was inspiring or something that caught our eye or just something that we want to provide the viewers to keep and hold on to the next week. So my thing of the week is one of my favorite books. It's a book called Make Me Wanna Holler. Ed, I coined a phrase called tangible me. A tangible me is someone that comes from the inner city, that goes back to his community and reach out to those individuals so they could touch them, feel them, smell them, and say, hey, I'm you, you are me, and there's a way out of this. So this book is about Nathan McCall, who wrote the book, and he's a tangible me. He went to prison, changed his life around, became a reporter, and now he's a professor at Emory University. So great book. I feel like everybody should read it. If you're into books about individuals that change their life around or want to know more about what a tangible me really is, that's an awesome book to read. Gina?
That sounds awesome, Phoenix. And it sounds like it ties a lot into what we were talking about too, that people are people and they need to also be representations to their communities and going back to their communities and saying like, hey, I made it out of this. I changed the future. I changed who I am, and you can too. Like, that's how we're going to make that difference in the world going forward. So I love that ties into everything that we've been talking about. So my thing of the week is actually going to be a challenge to all of our listeners, all of our viewers, to, exactly what we were talking about earlier, which is if we had all the money in the world, it would be wonderful. I challenge each of you to go and find an organization in your community and do what you can. If it's $1, if it's $10, whatever you feel comfortable sharing, please just find a organization that you feel can make a difference for the officers in your community, either, you know, a GoFundMe for a family, maybe that's lost a family member, people of color, whatever it is that you feel strongly can help make a change for our communities, please go fund those things. And also the challenge to go and continue to build those relationships yourself, because that is ultimately what it's going to take. It's going to take each and every one of us individually. Officer Ed, do you have anything, any last words that you want to leave us with?
Well, I mean, I guess I can give a little bit of a challenge as well, in a way. I've been thinking about it a little, and take time for yourself. You know, give yourself a minute to meditate during the day and think about, you know, the positive changes that can be made through communication and through education, and try and learn about other people, and just take time to love yourself.
I love that. Cheers to that.
Yeah, I like that.
My green screen is just completely getting out of my drink.
Yeah.
I'm not drinking anything, guys.
Yeah.
All right. Again, Officer Ed, thank you so much for joining us today. Everybody, thank you for tuning in again this week. Phoenix and I will have our links, as always, below for you to contact us if you're interested in working with us as life coaches. If you have any questions for us or Officer Ed, please comment them below. Phoenix, do you have anything left to add?
I do. Officer Ed, I think that was a great idea as far as having a program to train officers on multicultural awareness. I think that's something that's in my peer view. So if you viewers, if you're looking at it, it's something that you're interested in, Ed, if that's something that your department is interested in, I'm from Higher, and I know Gina will tag along with me, and we could definitely bring up, we could definitely develop a coaching program that could fit that need. So thank you, viewers, thank you. Subscribe, like, tell a friend, this one is powerful. We need to spread the word, and peace and love, happiness. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers.